Welcome, everybody, to this week's game recap episode of the At the Pylon podcast. Patriots brutally lose 34-0 to the New Orleans Saints this past Sunday. A low-effort performance from everybody on the Patriots. Chandler Betts and I will be here to talk about it. On top of that, Mac Jones is struggling, but does it stem in him doing too little or too much to this Patriots offense? We'll talk about it. And finally, it's pretty obvious that changes need to be made here in New England. Do those changes start with ousting Bill Belichick? We'll talk about all this stuff and more on today's episode of At the Pylon. Welcome, everybody, to the Patriots versus Saints recap episode of the At the Pylon podcast. Alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakas, and Chandler, while I was counseling children this week at a at a Greek Orthodox children's camp up in New Hampshire with no phone service, no TV, no nothing, you had the joy of watching the Patriots this past weekend. How'd that go?
Yeah, that was a heck of a game for you to not have to watch, but that was a hell of a game for you to have to rewatch knowing the score.
It was
poor guy. That was maybe the worst football game I've ever seen, and I think I might have said that twice already.
Literally, yeah, we keep saying it every week.
I think I've said that twice now.
But yeah, it was a bad game definitely to rewatch. Yeah. This is why you're seeing the episode on Tuesday this week. As we said last week, had to delay the episode a day. I got back last night, and I woke up this morning with the joyous activity of watching the Patriots 34-0 loss to the New Orleans Saints. And one takeaway I had, Chandler, and something that we should maybe start on this episode of At the Pylon is just the terrible overall thoughts of the team. I mean, obviously, it was an extremely low effort by basically everybody on the New England Patriots. The only person I can really think of that gave it some oomph was Juwan Bentley, and even that was nowhere near enough to get us anywhere close to even scoring a point in this one.
Yeah, that was a really poor performance all around. I have compiled some stats. I feel like this may be a common trend, and none of them are going to be good for the Patriots right now.
I'm excited to hear them,
though. In total, we had 8 first downs in total for the whole game. You know how many of those happened in the second half?
How many?
1.
Wow.
One first down in the whole second half. You know what else we only had 1 of? Third down conversions all day. Only 1.
So I was gonna say, actually, one of my points for the overview was just so many 3 and outs. It was ridiculous.
So many. If you have the free time, I didn't write them down. Look through the drive by drive amount of plays and amount of yards. The most that we had, the longest drive, was 35 yards. That's awesome. That's so not awesome. And the least we had was -2. So it was very bad. There was not a single drive that we had that we didn't go into the red zone at all throughout the course of the day. We had 3.1 yards per play, which is very, very low. And the worst play, we were talking about this right before we started. The worst play of the entire day. It wasn't any of the turnovers. It wasn't any of the fumbles, the fake tush push. It wasn't even that. It was the second drive, the last play of the second drive of the second half. We had just, we were on the 40. We were on the other teams. We were on the Saints 40. 4th and 3, was it?
Yep, 4th and 3.
Yeah. 4th and 3. Punt. Down 24-0. Punt. At home. Punt.
And the Boos rained down.
What are we doing? Yes, they did. That was, it's just such a cowardly decision, knowing that you don't have the talent and not even willing, when there is quite literally the definition of nothing to lose. That game was over. If you want to inspire any kind of confidence, any kind of momentum, you go for it on 4th and 3. 4th and 3 isn't like an unattainable yardage. It's not like it was 4th and 15. It's not like you just conceded 2 false starts, which would have been equally frustrating, but that wasn't even the case. You could have gone for it, and you don't. That just shows everything that you need to know. You could have just watched that one play, look at the score, and you would have gotten everything you needed to know about that game.
And we were talking, Chandler, before it started about the surrender stat. Is that what it's called?
Yes, the surrender index.
We saw that last year against the Packers when the Patriots made the very extremely questionable decision to punt on the Green Bay Packers 46-yard line in overtime while tied 24-24.
Yep.
In that case, it was very much a high percentage on the
Yep.
surrender index. But in this
Yes.
case, not as high, like you said, but still from a perspective of having nothing to play for. And
Yeah.
in that case against the Packers, sure, it was an extremely stupid decision. Surrender index emphasized that. But you could
Yes.
see some sort of logic behind that, like, oh, we trust our defense. We are trying to win this game. In this case, when you literally, this game was not winnable or attainable at this point at all, yet you still choose to punt away the ball.
Yeah.
It's just an embarrassment. And I think that stems off into the offense's performance throughout the day. Obviously, no touchdowns, no points whatsoever, not even a field goal. And I think that's a good point to turn to Chad Rylands and the rest of the special
Yeah.
team performance, because although the Patriots have been notorious years after year after year for their extremely effective special teams unit, it seems that this year has been extremely different and it's costing the Patriots left and right.
Yeah, we're seeing up until this week, actually, we've seen really poor snaps and really poor holds by Bryce Behringer. We didn't have issues with that today, or not today, Sunday, but Chad Ryland hits a very natural draw. I didn't love that he started it in the center. As somebody who likes to really appreciate a good kicker and a good punter, he didn't play his draw, as people in golf call it. And you noticed it very clearly. He's done it every single time in the season. Some kickers naturally have that. And he doesn't seem to be, either it's for some reason he doesn't do it. If it's new to him, I didn't watch enough of his kicks at Maryland, if he's always done this, or if the special team staff isn't telling him, hey, you need to start this off of the right post so that it's going to draw in, because every single one of your kicks is drawn, or that really horrible duck hook last week. We are not seeing a good special teams performance on kicking. Punting, Bryce Behringer's been pretty good as a punter. He's got a lot of reps,
Yeah, but a lot of low snaps. We saw it a
Sure,
couple of
yes,
times last game. Joe Cardona not having that.
which is so surprising.
Yeah, it is. It's just, it's like, it seems like a decline coming from the special teams perspective. And I thought
Yeah,
that maybe a change in personnel would help, but it seems to not really helping us at all this year. And that was
yeah,
just one of the many disasters for New England. Let's move to the offense. As we said, no points for New England in this game. Mac Jones, I believe it was 12 for 22. Guy didn't even get 150 yards. I think it was like 121, I want to say. I'm not looking at it right now, but it was somewhere in the 120s. But I'll check after I throw it to you.
yeah,
No separation
yeah.
from any receivers or weapons. No running game. Offensive line, terrible as always. And Mac Jones with multiple turnovers. It's just a dumpster fire right now for New England on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, while you look that up, I'm gonna go over a couple of individual players, and then I want to cover some of the season stats of the offense thus far, compare it to last year specifically. So, starting with players, the most important player in theory on the offense, David Andrews. I literally wrote down after the second drive. I think the only correspondence I had with Nick during the game, I said,
Was this moment? Yes, it was.
yeah, I said David Andrews is atrocious. He is so bad right now. And I especially feel bad for him because not only has his play seriously declined, he is getting absolutely torn apart in the middle right now. But also, after every game, he is sent as the first person to the podium to have to deal with the brunt of all of this. It's not all his fault. Some of it's his fault, absolutely. Trent Brown, who's supposed to be one of the better tackles in the league, he's 6'8", 375 or whatever.
Right back to where he was last year. Hayden.
There was one play that both he and was it Verdarian Lowe starting at right tackle? I really
think it was
tried to.
Antonio Mafia, I want to say.
It could
Or
have
was
been.
Antonio Mafia on the left side?
Mafia is
It's
a
just a
traditional
blender
eight
now of
guard. Yeah,
offensive linemen. It doesn't even register
yeah.
anymore.
I believe it was Verdarian Lowe starting at right tackle. I
You
could
might
be
be right.
wrong, but I think so. I think Mafia was starting at left guard, right guard.
I
One of the
think it
guard
was left
positions.
guard. I think it was left
Yeah.
guard. You're right.
Yeah, but there was one play that both of them were just looking back at Mac Jones, and then Cam Jordan and whoever their other I don't think it's Davenport anymore, whoever their other defensive end was, were just an inch away from Mac Jones. And they're just looking back so helpless. This offensive line is just so bad. And that factors into everything that Mac Jones has done. What was kind of nice about this game in a way, because I knew we weren't going to be able to throw the ball at all. Whenever Mac Jones drops back, I could just watch him and not watch any of the receivers because I knew whatever happens, they're not going to be able to get open. So I watched a lot of Mac Jones in this game, and I came out with two really important things: his feet and his eyes. Now, this is like a very something that a lot of quarterback coaches will really focus on. It's the feet. That one play, there were two good plays he actually had. There was the one good play with Hunter Henry, cross ball across the middle.
I think so. Yep.
I think so. Oh no, that was last week. Sorry, I'm talking about this last week play. To talk about this one. He had one really lovely ball. Hunter Henry, he does the same play every week. That's the one good play that works every week. It's a little cross route, deep cross for about 15, 20 yards. Sends across the middle to Hunter Henry. Catches it. But the key for Mac Jones is his feet. All of his cleats are in the ground. He can plant and he can throw the ball. When he does that, he's cool. He's an all right quarterback. I don't like when people are saying that if he were in the 49ers offense, he would be better than Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy clearly doesn't have the mental block right now that Mac has. And that is partly because of the offensive line, partly because of the wide receiver core, probably partly because of Bill O'Brien, partly because of literally every single person in this organization, maybe except Hunter Henry, who is the best Patriot we have on offense right now. The only person who seems to like Mac Jones and wants to get open for him. And Pop's cool. Pop's a guy. He had that one really cool spin move.
Until he got ousted out again.
Yeah.
He got injured.
That's what happens when you're a lighter player. It's going to happen more often or not.
And you finished, sorry.
No, I have a big ramble, so feel free to interrupt me at any point.
Well, yeah, I pulled up Mac's stats.
Yes.
I know you were talking about his footwork. Although the guy, I'll give him credit again, he has absolutely no time to throw, and it seems like it's getting worse every week, even though I would say that the defenses that we're playing are getting easier.
Also getting worse.
We talked about it in last week's episode, the preview episode, that this Saints front seven was probably the weakest front seven that we were facing so far this year.
Yeah.
And it showed absolutely no signs of that. They ripped through our offensive line easily, but that's still no makeup for Mac and his stats here. 54.5% completion rate, 2 interceptions, 0 touchdowns, only 110 yards. I was generous giving him 121.
Yeah, Jesus.
And that's compared to last week, which many of us were saying that was probably the worst performance of his career. He one-upped himself from last week, getting 40 less yards, same amount of interceptions, and even less of a QB rating this week, having a QBR of 30.5. So,
gosh.
While he's been down in the dumps, I will say that the offensive line is not making any favors for him. And while I had so much praise for Mac at the beginning of the year, giving him the kudos of the offensive line is stinking right now, and it's costing Mac in this offense. But he has the ability most of the time to stay poised in the pocket, keep his feet set, and get the throw down, even though he has to take a hit every time. These past few weeks, that has just vanished. He's just a scrambling mess in the pocket. He can't set his feet. We saw that on the first interception of the day, trying to force out a play. And we'll get into this a little bit later. He was trying to force the ball out, got hit as he threw it, and it led into the hands of Tyrann Mathieu for a pick six. But go ahead on your little rant there, Chandler. I'll let you finish.
No, you're good. So talking about the offensive line and also talking about down, it's a really important phrase here. His eyes. We've always noticed collectively. I had praise for it at the beginning, and now I have negative thoughts about it now, about Mac having to move his feet while he's throwing the ball. He's not, and especially while he has deceptive speed, as we've seen through a couple times this season, he's not an especially mobile quarterback. He's not an Aaron Rodgers type where he can throw from a bunch of different platforms. That's not how Mac Jones plays. When his feet aren't in the ground, he isn't able to accurately deliver the ball. We've seen that. And I was really wondering why his feet aren't always in the ground. Is it a lack of confidence? Is a lack of confidence in the offensive line? And the answer to that is yes, it is both of those things. He is so focused at looking at the offensive line that even if, in the off chance that someone does get open, he's not ready to throw them the ball. It's so important for quarterbacks to have timing with their offense and with their receivers. And so it was a big thing. When Peyton Manning was playing, he was super, super anal about getting players at the exact yard splits that he would want. If there was a route that in the playbook said to be run at 10 yards, if someone ran it at 9.5, he would chew their head off. To us, that means nothing. It's a half yard difference. The ball is going to get there. No, that is everything. That is the meticulous level that a successful football team needs. And when you can't even have your head up to look if they're at that situation, how can you expect to demand that of the receivers? There's nothing that is working with Mac. He's mentally crushed right now. And I know we're about to move into that, so I will yield my time to the chair. But yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. And I don't think that there's an easy fix or a fix at all, maybe.
It's a mess. And one point as we transition into this at the camp, actually, we were talking with the fellow staff about how Mac's demeanor has changed from his first press conference with the Patriots to now. He was so like joyous, involved, like ready to be a Patriot, so excited to like actually play for the team week 1 of 2021. But that demeanor has totally vanished and he's just almost a shell of himself. But the problems obviously stem at this disconnect between Mac and the rest of the offense, Mac from the coaching staff, Mac from the fans and analysts of New England in general. So I guess one question to pose to you, Chandler, is do these problems for Mac Jones stem at Mac having too little talent or possibly just him doing too much in the game?
I think it's more so him doing too much. I think that there is a quarterback that in 2007 would have been an excellent quarterback. You know who? And I'm making this off the top of my head right now. He's kind of like a Matt Castle in a way. He's not an overly talented quarterback, but he's one that if he has everything go right around him, he can do some things. I'd like to actually use this opportunity to harken back to something that I saw on Reddit on Sunday night, December 2021. Patriots had just beaten the Bills to go 9-4. You know where we were in the AFC?
We were first.
We were the 1 seed. People were like, Mac is the future. We might get another Super Bowl under Bill Belichick. How long ago does that feel?
So long.
That
And
feels
Chandler,
like
I think about it
20 years.
every week. I think about it because I did a segment
Yeah.
for WBN and Emerson saying, oh, this is where the Patriots are going to finally take their position and reassert themselves as a dominant force in the AFC. They just got to keep rolling like they are now. But that feels like a totally different universe compared to the situation we're in now.
It's an eternity ago. And Mac has consistently proven that in the situation that I'm not saying it's kind of a chicken egg thing because Mac, yes, he is a big part of the blame. I'm not going to defend him, but he can't be all of the blame with the complete and utter lack of talent around him. He is trying to do too much because he has to do too much, and he's not the player that can do too much. And I don't really know if there is a quarterback that could completely fix everything that's going on right now. I don't even think a Mahomes could do it because he wouldn't have a Travis Kelce. He wouldn't have even an Andy Reid. I think that this is going all the way up to the top, as I'm sure we'll cover throughout the course of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But Mac Jones is really trying to do too much, and I can't entirely blame him for it. But when your confidence is completely shattered, I've talked about confidence for the past couple of weeks. We collectively don't have any, and we have killed everything that Mac Jones has in that aspect. Yeah. That's
a great point to close on, Chandler. I agree with everything that you've said there, and I'll make one point. Just that Mac just seems, and we saw it in that interception that I was talking about, he's trying to make a play out of nothing because it seems that Mac in the back of his mind, and this all stems at the confidence point that you keep making, he doesn't have the trust of the coaching staff, of the fans, of his fellow players, no one. So in these circumstances, when we as viewers are like, all right, dude, we know it's not your fault. In this case specifically, just take the sack. Take the sack. Don't get a turnover. We talked about last week how important it was for the Patriots to not get any turnovers this week. in the first 7 quarters, the first 3 quarters of this game and the previous 4 quarters of last game, the Pats had, I think it was 7 or 10 turnovers. I'm blanking. I think it was 10. 10 turnovers, most in Belichick's history. Another one, 33 straight drives, no touchdowns. Most in Bill Belichick's tenure as head coach in New England. So it seems that with all these stats whirling around in Mac's head through the media, whatever else it is, he's like, I got to make this happen. I got to get this play. I got to be the hero. And while I think Mac has more skill than you're giving him credit for, which I mean is understandable in your place because I've been a supporter of Mac forever. I see things, I guess, that others don't. But he doesn't have that skill. He can't make that throw. He's getting sacked and just make the as soon as he let go of that ball, I was like, oh, that's it. Because he's not Patrick Mahomes. He can't make a throw while he's falling on the ground to complete for a pass for a first down, even if it was short of the first down, he couldn't make that throw. It's just too out of his skill set, and he just needs to have like a total reassessment of who he is as a quarterback and stop trying to be what he's not, because the fact of the matter is it's making him and the Patriots much worse. And it's making my point of Mac Jones still being valid of staying on this roster and staying there starting QB seem less and less rational every week that I try to defend it. But with that, Chandler, there's changes that need to happen here in New England, whether it's Mac, the offense, the defense, even the coaching staff. This past week, the first headline I saw when I got back into Wi-Fi Radius was, should the Patriots fire Bill Belichick? Is his time up? And while in the past, we've heard ramblings from fans like, oh, fire Belichick. Like last year we heard it. Get rid of him. His era's over, whatever. It seems like professional analysts in the field, NBC Sports Boston, ESPN, juggernauts of covering the Patriots are starting to see that same light. Do you think that the Patriots should move on from the Belichick era? The Belichick era, is it over in New England?
So I'm going to answer that question with some stats here. I have them on my phone. So we can agree that last year was a horrible offensive performance that we thought was going to be completely different, right? So this year we have 3.3 yards per carry. Last year, 4.3. This year we have 32% completion percentage on third down. Last year was 34. This year we're averaging 287 yards. Last year, 314. 4.4 yards per play this year, and that's with a 3.1 this past week. 5.3 yards per play last year, and this is the most damning one to me. I'll start this one with the last year. Last year, 6.8 yards per pass attempt. Now that is already really low.
Yeah.
6 this year. And I think that we are witnessing. Do you remember last week or 2 weeks ago when I talked about Zach Wilson very extensively about how we're seeing the next David Carr?
Mm-hmm.
Are we seeing the next David Carr, actually? Not Jets fans. It's very possible. And that's sad to say because one of the key reasons for that was poor coaching, really poor roster construction. That is the key here, the roster construction. The biggest person to blame, and I have said this in the past, the biggest person to blame is the general manager, Bill Belichick. And I'm getting to the point where it's feeling like ever since the Raiders game last year, everything has gone wrong. There's been poor situational football. In the Bills game last year, 2 kickoff touchdowns. The Raiders, 2 laterals, neither of which were successful, obviously. And just a complete implosion of everything related to football. I'll give Belichick credit for getting Christian Gonzalez. I'll give him credit for taking Booty. I'll give him credit for taking Demario Douglas. But throughout the past 5 years, and I talked about last time how I would start to talk about how I have felt that the Patriot way has been on the precipice of being over multiple times. The first of which was when we even still had Brady and we had just a complete lack of talent in his last year.
Yep.
My thought of the Patriot way at the time was that the Patriot way is maximizing with what you have. And you get to a point where the league becomes so smart, where analytics are so advanced. Everything that Ernie Adams was the pioneer of is becoming more and more commonplace everywhere else in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Those underutilized players, that Moneyball-esque aspect, which is a crazy way to think about how we won, but it's accurate. Successful teams use analytics to win games. And everything that we did to do that, we had so many smart players. We don't see a single smart play on this football team right now. The only smart play was the Brennan Schooler block kick. That was the only smart play we've seen since that Raiders game last year. Everything that is a hallmark of a Bill Belichick team, we have not seen. So that raises the question. If all of the magic of Bill Belichick has seemingly run out, what is there left? It's a former era. It's a coach from a former era who has clearly not successfully adapted to the modern NFL. We are not seeing an understanding of what it takes to construct a roster. We are seeing a lack of explosion on teams. The amount of times I've said this Dolphins team is the best constructed roster, best constructed offense in football. They are doing everything. They are at the cutting edge of everything football. We are the most subprime cut of meat. This team needs to change everything, and I feel as though the only solution at this point, and I really don't like to be the one saying this, has to be at the very top, and that is Bill Belichick.
And we'll get into every aspect that we feel needs to change in a minute, but just to respond to your point, as much as Belichick has been 50% of the reason, I give it a 50-50 split between Brady and him for all the Patriots' success while the two were together in New England's. This era that we've seen, and it seems like the rest of the league has finally caught on to the Patriot way. Obviously, we were talking 2 years ago about not 2 years ago, 2 weeks ago, about the mental aspect of the Patriots game and the Patriot way. And it seems that it's dead in the Patriots locker room. They don't have that gusto anymore to go out and get a win in any scenario, despite what last week looked like. It's just not in their resume anymore. But it expands beyond that. These past 2 weeks, getting outscored 72-3, 2 horrible blowouts against teams that theoretically we thought we could beat at service level. And the Cowboys are a tough team, sure, but I thought we had a shot to win that game. That's why I picked them. But the Saints game, you and I were both optimistic. We thought we had this game. And theoretically, considering circumstances, we should have won this game. It should have been a win, but it wasn't. And that's because of this disperse and disappearance of smart football. That point you made about the Raiders game last year really just seems to make things full circle, because at that moment, watching that play unfold, I was bursting out in laughter despite the pain I was feeling inside, because it was just unbelievable. In what world is a Bill Belichick-led team pulling something as stupid as lateraling back and forth? And it honestly ties in nicely to the Miami play from this past weekend, where they chose to run the ball, even though they won the game. They would have won it if they just need the ball. Yeah. And in my mind, I'm like, this is one of the worst plays in football history, up there with the Patriots laterals from last year. Because why would you do something like that at a professional level? Why? We don't know. And that's why this situation is so confusing with Bill Belichick and crew. And while it really pains me inside to think about something changing at the top, it's starting to become more and more of a possibility as weeks go on. And business is business. That's been the thing, and Belichick's mantra almost for his entire era with the New England Patriots. But if the Patriots are going to adapt to business being business, are they going to can them? And that's the question that we're going to have to see in the coming weeks or months. But, I mean, do you have anything else to add before I move to like the last part of what is everything you need to change?
The next step. Trade. This team doesn't have talent. We should be selling off all assets. There is nothing that can come out of this season. I will jokingly say that there is a non-zero chance that we go 1-16, but at the same time, there is an actual chance that we go 1-16 because this team is so bad. The defense has been poor since the Cowboys game. It's a lot of injuries. There is the excuse to be made there, but at the same time, we got a Saints offense at the best possible time to get them. Derek Carr has a sprained AC joint, and he looked like Dan Marino out that game. Alvin Kamara came off of extensive time of not playing. And then a game where we talked about how he had 13 receptions for only 33 yards. 10 of those receptions happened behind the line of scrimmage. There was no explosion in that offense. And we made them look like the Dolphins. We made them look like we looked in 2007. That offense, we had the worst and second worst losses in Bill Belichick's career in back-to-back weeks. This team has no confidence, has no talent, has evidently no coaching ability at this point, and no ability to construct, and no future. Sell everything. Don't sell the team though. I still like Robert Kraft. But I am not the person. I'm a very rational person. I'm not the person to go the nuclear option. There is nothing left. There's no bright side to the season. The peak that this team could do, I said 5-12 going into the season. I think that is the peak that this team could do at this point.
That's really sad, but I think it's true. And while we go to this point of everything that I think the Patriots need to change, let's first look at the defense. This defense is talented, don't get me wrong. But like you said, this season being a wash, you got to sell out. And it hurts me to say this, but the most pivotal loss of Judon's injury is the fact that he no longer has trade value because of it.
You're so right. I was thinking that last week. You're so right.
It really stings because I love the guy and he wants to retire here. But unless if he wants to take a pay cut, we just can't afford to keep him around with that value that he has. Like if he's going to go down cheap and play with us, fine. You know, it's good to have a talented player like that around. But at this point, we just got to sell on that defense. And the offense's perspective, the only two players I want around, and this is really going to cause some, I guess, turmoil between us, is Hunter Henry being the first.
Yep.
And Mac Jones. I'm still in on Mac.
I'll take one of them. So actually, hold on. I will acquiesce this. Because I believe this season is a wash. There is no more harm that you can do to Mac Jones. He will not be do you think that he will be the quarterback next year?
That begs the question. Right now, the Patriots have the third overall pick in the NFL draft. Bears got 1 and 2. New England has 3.
Yes.
Do I think that drafting a quarterback next year and plopping him into this scenario is valid? Honestly, no. Because even if we get a talented guy in the draft, and I know you've talked about it, and you know more than I do when it comes to this.
Starting next week, I will be talking about a draft prospect every episode. I will be starting that.
Literally, but if we plop a guy more talented than Mac, even 2 times more talented than Mac into this scenario, I think he's going to fail. I don't see it working out because it's such a disastrous scenario. What I would do is use that draft capital, use all the supposed money we're going to have next year because we're going to have a lot of money. If you want to keep Belichick around, he's got his one stint next year. You keep Mac, you keep Henry, you ditch the offense, you sell out on the defense this year, and next year you go into it with those young guys that we have living underneath on our depth chart that can actually start and play well in the NFL. Pose those guys to the defensive challenge and spend friggin' money on the offense. Spend it all, overpay guys, I don't care, and either use that third pick to trade down and get 2 first-round picks and pick up some talent, or if Matt keeps spiraling out this year, fine, sell on him, get a quarterback. But right now, where we stand here at following week 5, I'd keep Mac and just pound in the offensive talent. And after that, if that doesn't work and Belichick still wants to be around, I'm sorry, but we're waving goodbye in that case because it's just not worth it.
I want to pose one very quick comparison, probably as my last point to make. You are very rarely in the top 3 to get a quarterback, especially when there are 2 generational quarterbacks this year in a Caleb Williams and a Drake May. I think Drake May is probably going to go 3 because 1 and 2 are going to be a quarterback and probably Marvin Harrison Jr. That's my thoughts. To the point of thinking that the situation is so bad that a quarterback can't make it work, look at C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud came into a dumpster fire of an organization, a team that still doesn't have a good offensive line, and everyone keeps getting hurt. Of their 5 stars at the beginning of the year, I believe 2 of them are out. I know one of them's out. I believe 2 of them are out for the whole season. So they have a banged up offensive line. They have subprime assets at weapons, and Nico Collins and Tank Dell has been awesome, but Nico Collins is primarily their number 1 receiver. He'd probably barely be our number 1 receiver, maybe not even. and he has not even thrown a pick yet. He just set the record for the most starts, the most snaps without a pick. Great quarterbacks can make it work.
And I guess that's a good point, Chandler. And although I want to stay committed to Mac, I think you're right in waiting until the assessment of the season concludes. While Mac can guarantee to be hanging around for the rest of this year, Bill Belichick and the rest of the New England Patriots are all up in the air right now in terms of what's going to happen. And I guess that's a good point to just look ahead to next week. New England Patriots versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Chandler and I will have a preview episode for you lined up back on our regular schedule. We'll be back here on Thursday for that preview episode. Not a lot of great things to talk about going into it, but we'll be here regardless. Hopefully you enjoyed today's recap episode despite that, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at the Pylon, as well as subscribing to us here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, make sure to give us a follow, turn on notifications so you can know whenever episodes go live. But if you want direct access to that, as well as clips from episodes, head over to the Instagram at @the.pylon. We post clips there, updates on when episodes go live. Stay tuned. We'll see you Thursday. From Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakas. We'll see you back here on Thursday for a preview episode. Goodbye, everybody.